It's the latest provocation by Pakistan. This time, Pakistani Marines have targeted innocent Indian fishermen by opening indiscriminate firing on them. These Indian fishermen were targeted by Pakistani Marines at sea closer to Dwarka in Gujarat. One Indian fisherman has been reportedly killed in this firing. So the latest report confirms a fisherman named Iqbal has been killed in this firing. Joining me from the newsroom is senior news editor Gaurav Sawant. Gaurav, take us through the initial details that you have. Do we know if it's only one fisherman who's been killed, or are there reports of more injuries as well?
Mohammad Iqbal Bhatti is the name of the fisherman who's been killed in unprovoked Pakistani firing at sea. And these are fishermen who were fishing in Indian waters. Of course, details very sketchy just as yet. Both the Ministry of External Affairs are trying to ascertain details, as is the Coast Guard. The Coast Guard has just dispatched a ship to these waters of Okha, is the initial information that is coming in. One fisherman is dead, one could be injured, but this is very preliminary information, Smita, that's coming in just as yet.
But Gaurav, also tell us what time was this incident reported, and how much time will these Coast Guard ships take, perhaps, the ones that have been dispatched, because as far as maritime boundaries and maritime issues are concerned, they can really be very complicated.
You're spot on there. Maritime boundaries are very, and especially exclusive economic zone. Were they in India's exclusive economic zone? Were they in Indian coastal waters? Were they fishing closer to Pakistani waters? This will be very, very contentious just at this stage. Details are still awaited just as yet, Smita. Both the Ministry of External Affairs and the Coast Guard have said we are waiting to find out more. The initial information which came in on the wireless about one fisherman being shot dead by the Pakistan Maritime Agency. More details are awaited, but there is a protocol in place, and this is a clear violation from what Coast Guard sources are telling India today. The protocol very clearly says if there's an Indian fishing boat, even if it's in Pakistani waters, they can arrest the fisherman, they can detain the fisherman, they can detain the boat, but they cannot kill. And why did they do this? That still remains to be seen, but more details will only be available once the first few boats of the Coast Guard managed to reach the spot.
Also, Gaurav, as far as the fishermen issue between India and Pakistan is concerned, we have seen several arrests made in the past, and on more than one occasion, of course, these fishermen are then released as humanitarian interventions, perhaps ahead of large summits. So is this the same area where a lot of these arrests have also been made over the years?
No clarity just as yet. The initial information that Coast Guard and Gujarat police were willing to share, the coastal police, was that this was an incident that took place off the coast of Okha. So exactly how far were they from the coast of Okha? Did the Pakistani Navy ship, did the Maritime Agency ship come deep into Indian waters? And if that was the case, then what was the Indian Coast Guard doing? All of that we will know in a while from now. But you're absolutely right. There have been incidents in the past where the Coast Guard have taken Pakistani fishermen into custody. On the other hand, Pakistani fishermen who are fishing in Indian waters, they've been taken into custody and they're released before big talks that happen. Some of these are also used as spies or agents from either sides. That also happens. Some of them are also involved in smuggling. But in this particular case, details are still awaited, Smita.
Okay, stay with us. So Gaurav Sawant, they are getting us the latest on this story. Remember, there has been a shooting incident in the maritime, of course, waters as far as the Dwarka coast of Gujarat is concerned. And firing has been reported from the Pakistani Marine side, where one fisherman named Iqbal has been killed. That is one confirmation that has been passed out as far as the Indian Navy and the Coast Guard is concerned. But the Coast Guard has dispatched 2 vessels into this area, which is the Okha area, as far as Dwarka coast is concerned. But Gaurav, clearly at a time when India and Pakistan are exchanging such severe hostilities along the LOC, the international border, this maritime latest, of course, heated exchange is only going to in fact, add to the increased heat.
when you look at the situation, and since you cover foreign affairs very closely, Smita, there is tension along the line of control. There's been an incident north of Pir Panjal. There is tension south of Pir Panjal, infiltration, unprovoked firing, and now even the maritime agencies of the two countries will perhaps get involved in this, especially after this incident. But of course, details are still awaited. As far as the situation north of Pir Panjal is concerned, well, there was an infiltration attempt. 5 terrorists have been killed. The initial information was 2 terrorists killed, but army sources have just told us that 3 more bodies have been recovered. A large amount of arms and ammunition that these terrorists were bringing in, including a rocket-propelled grenade, that's been recovered from these terrorists, and RPG. They've also recovered some other arms and ammunition from these terrorists. So yes, you know, there is an increase from Pakistani side, not just to send in more terrorists, but also to increase the number of ceasefire violations that are taking place both north and south of Pir Panjal. Pakistan, on the other hand, says that these ceasefire violations are happening from the Indian side. Pakistani media just yesterday was reporting 4 deaths in Pakistan-occupied Kashmir in Indian retaliation. So the situation is tense, but the fact that it's now escalated to the maritime area is a new development, Smita.
Gaurav, also, tell our viewers, for the benefit of the viewers, as to what is the existing mechanism that we have when it comes to the maritime borders between India and Pakistan. We've seen that Italian Marines row happened, just 2 years back, which led to that huge controversy between India and Italy, where 2 Indian fishermen were killed. In fact, the matter was also dragged to the International Court, which now, in fact, that international tribunal, which was intervening in this entire case. But when it comes to India and Pakistan, how different is the mechanism?
Well, if we were to look at the recent border talks that happened between the Border Security Force of India and Pakistan Rangers, they've even talked about a series of confidence-building measures should there be a situation on either side. Confidence-building measures that also include that you fire flares of a particular color in case there is a situation that's developing, instead of firing real bullets, so that both sides are alerted and then they can talk. While there are CBMs in place, while there are mechanisms in place for the two coastal agencies to also remain in touch, our DG Coast Guard and their officials, they routinely interact. But at the ground level, a situation suddenly spirals out of control, and before the agencies get involved, a situation can get out of hand. But as of now, this is an incident which is related to the information that came in from the coast, from the fisherman's boat, was that the Pakistani maritime agencies fired at 2 boats. In 1 boat, 1 fisherman was killed. Okay,
Gaurav, stay with us. I'm also joined by retired Major General Ashok Mehta and, of course, sir, if you can hear us, this is the report that's coming in from the Dwarka coast of Gujarat, where 1 Indian fisherman has been killed reportedly in Pakistan Marines firing. How do you look at this entire incident?
Well, one more violation of international norms and maritime law by clearly firing at an unarmed vessel. Whereas it was quite possible to apprehend them without resorting to violence. So this is something that should not surprise anybody. Pakistan Marines or Pakistan soldiers are trigger happy and will fire at the first opportunity the moment they learn that these are Indian citizens. So I'm not surprised, and India must take this incident most seriously as a violation of international law, international maritime law, and of international humanitarian law.
Sir, but you think that this is a matter that, if required, can be dragged to an international court, perhaps the ICJ, or is there always a hesitation when it comes to Pakistan and taking it to the international court on the side of New Delhi?
Well, first we have to obviously probe the incident, but the fact we have a clear case because it's an unarmed ship. So regardless of the fact that it is strayed into Pakistani waters, unarmed vessels are to be dealt with according to the law of the seas maritime dimensions. They are to be apprehended. There is a standard operating procedure which apparently has not been followed. if there was any hostile activity carried out by the boat, the unarmed fishing vessel, it's a different matter. But I cannot imagine that they would indulge in any such activity. So you have a prima facie, you have a case ab initio to wag a finger at Pakistan and then develop it further and take it through the appropriate route to the international authority.
Okay, sir, stay with us. Gaurav, do we know for sure, has there been a confirmation from the Indian side that this was indeed an unarmed vessel which was only carrying regular fishermen, that there was no indication whatsoever that these might have been smugglers or armed men in the boat?
None whatsoever. These were Indian fishermen. That's the information that is coming in. Not smugglers, not engaged in any of those activities. In fact, two Indian Coast Guard ships, an offshore patrol vessel, an advanced offshore patrol vessel, Miraben and Vijit, they have now been dispatched. We still don't know how long will they take to get to this exact spot where the firing has taken place. But from what Coast Guard sources are telling India today, they intend to deal with this with the utmost seriousness that the situation requires. And as General Ashok Mehta was rightly pointing out, this is a clear violation of rules of engagement at sea. Dealing with unarmed fishermen, you cannot open fire at them. They were not engaged in any hostile activity. In case they were smuggling, in case they were fishing in Pakistani waters, they could have been arrested, detained, and their boats could also have been taken. But firing is provocation, Smita.
Okay, General Mehta, do you recall of any incidents in the recent past where perhaps instead of following the standard operating procedure as you were mentioning, and instead of arresting fishermen, Pakistan actually chose to just simply shoot indiscriminately?
I think this is certainly the first incident where such a hostile reaction to unarmed fishing boats has been done by Pakistan. Now, Pakistanis are traditionally very trigger happy, both on land and at sea, and therefore they have reacted in the most uncalled for manner and violating the rules of engagement at sea. And therefore, I had mentioned earlier that we have to take up this matter not just with the Pakistan authorities, because nothing will come out of that. There will be denial, or there will be some other story about hostile activity. But the fact is that all this, what's happening at sea, what's happening on land, what's happening covert, all this is something that must be brought to the notice of the international community.
Right.
The rogue behavior of Pakistan state and non-state actors. Now, this is state. We see the state in acting in a hostile, completely unauthorized and illegal manner.
Okay.
And all these activities must be bunched together and taken up suitably diplomatically.
Okay, for now, many thanks General Mehta as well as Gaurav Sawant for having joined us with all the details and the perspective. General Mehta, they're suggesting that one needs to connect all the dots as far as the recent events are concerned, be it of course ceasefire violations along the line of control, the firing, the shootings along the international boundary, to of course now this latest incident of firing as far as the maritime border is concerned between India and Pakistan. We are slipping into